All right, let's get into the movie review for tonight. And tonight's movie is another Heston classic, The Omega Man. And let's get in. Yeah, The Omega Man. This quick synopsis is: due to experimental vaccine, Dr. Robert Neville is the only survivor of an apocalyptic war, with the exception of a few hundred deformed, nocturnal people who are also homicidal maniacs. They blame science and technology for their condition, and they see Neville as the last symbol of science. Therefore, he must die. Neville uses everything at his disposal in an attempt to survive.
Synopsis. One thing to note too. So this I've been watching the since it's almost Halloween. I've been watching a lot of the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes, and the
they did,
the season 9 one of the shorts from that season's Treehouse of Horror dealt with this very thing. It was kind of like a parody of the Omega Man, which is great. I was like, because before I was like, what is this from? And I thought maybe it was just something original that they created. I was like, but it's like, no, they're usually like parodying some sort of like horror film or something like that. And now that I've watched the Omega Man, which I had never heard of before, it's like, oh, that's what they were going with. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw it, I was aware of the Omega Man, and I knew, I had a loose understanding, but I never watched it. But so yeah, and then I saw it, and I was still able to chuckle at the jokes that that in the Simpson version. But now watching the actual movie, it makes a lot more sense, and I'm able to enjoy all that more. But also, this movie, this is actually the Omega Man was actually either a reboot or a remake from an earlier 1960s version, which starred Vincent Price. And then subsequently they rebooted or redid the Omega Man, but went with the actual title from where they got the inspiration for, which was I Am Legend, starring Will Smith.
That's right. Yeah, and see, I didn't know that there was a one with Vincent Price, that this was a remake of that, and you had told me that this is essentially like what I Am Legend was a remake of too. So I might have to go and kind of watch through all of them to see which version I like better. I would probably lean towards the Charlton Heston one, just because I do like Heston a lot. But yeah, this movie was kind of interesting because you have Dr. Neville, who is kind of, you can tell he's descending into madness in a sense because of the the solitude that he has to endure during the day, but at night he's constantly under attack from these ghouls, these mutated maniacs. And the leader of that group is Matthias is the and so it's just this constant battle between him and the group of monsters. And there was a couple of interesting things that you see during the film too, it's set in Los Angeles, I think, so you get to see a lot of the at the time, some of the famous landscapes of Los Angeles, including Dodger Stadium.
Really?
Yeah. So when they first capture Dr. Neville, right, and they're getting ready to burn him. You see that stadium that they're in with all the yellow seats? That's Dodger Stadium.
Okay. For some reason, I thought that was a Coliseum.
No. The seats, those yellow seats, that's Dodger Stadium.
Okay. Okay, that's
Because
cool.
and I also know that too, because like when they were finally like escaping through all the tunnels and stuff, that's
Mhm.
that's in the baseball stadium.
Ah, I see. Yeah, it's funny because initially I thought, kind of like in the Will Smith one, it was taking place in New York. But then
Right.
once I started to see, and once I started to recognize more of the buildings and the landmarks, I was like, oh, this takes place in L.A., which makes sense because
Yeah.
when they open up with the news anchor, it's a West Coast or I guess in this case an L.A. station.
Right.
So and then it's funny, it's interesting too that the newscaster ends up becoming the leader of the mutants.
Was Is that who that was?
Yeah, because the leader of the mutants used a specific phrase, the people of the wheel. And then in kind of like a flashback, the newscaster also uses that phrase. So I was like, ah, yeah, I get
Oh
it.
shit! I didn't think I missed that part altogether. Man, like that's deep. I didn't, dude. I had to go back and I had to go back and watch this again. Like it, but yeah, it was weird. Yeah, you see how, but like Dr. Neville, he's descending into madness. Like, and you can kind of tell he's starting to crack a little bit. Like, obviously,
Mhm.
he's talking to himself, answering like his own questions, hearing telephones ringing that aren't ringing.
Right, because you see, you get the first indications of it when he as he's driving around in his car, he blows out a tire, and I guess he doesn't want to take the risk of or take the time to switch out the tires, so he just goes into like a car dealership and just takes one of the cars. But in the process, he's talking or negotiating with or in his imagination, he's negotiating with the salesperson, even though the
Right.
salesperson is dead at his desk, and so. And so like you kind of see like the first like stages of him like losing his mind, and then he goes to the movie theater and he watches this movie about Woodstock, and he's able to recite all the lines in the movie, and you just kind of see his like kind of disconnect where he's like like he just even though he's repeating these lines because he's watched it probably hundreds of times, and
Yeah.
like he's gotten to the point where it's like he just wants to end things. Yet he still has his will to survive, and then again he has like the auditory hallucinations where he hears like all the payphones ringing around him, and he has to kind of like snap himself out of it. But
He's like,
interestingly,
your
there is
phone
another
was
scene,
ringing.
right? But there is another scene like that when he runs into the woman. Uh, the woman, Lisa, and
Right.
initially she spots it like in the department store, and she like makes a noise, and she like freezes like a mannequin uh, to evade Robert, and then all of a sudden like she bolts, and then so he goes running after her and through the park, and then he's not able to catch her or see her, so he starts trying to um, reaffirm his sanity. And then he's like he's talking to himself. It's like, oh, you're really losing it now. You're seeing things. It's like, no, wait, that's not the first sign of you losing your mind. It's talking to yourself. It's like, yeah, that's right. You're right. And so it's like, kind of like this funny, this kind of humorous take.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
laughed out loud. I was like, I laughed out loud when I heard that. I was like, oh man. um, yeah, this is well. It's funny because this is our what this is the second dystopian film that we've seen with Charlton Heston, where it's
but it
like
won't be the
obviously one
last.
is set. Won't be the last either. But one based in L.A., one based in New York, one and kind of the opposite problem, whereas like in Soylent Green, there's just too many fucking people like everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like in here, there's nobody. There's nobody left outside of this.
Right. Yeah. Outside the mutants and a handful of survivors.
Right.
Um,
And so yeah, he ends up finally getting captured by the ghouls. I forget how he first gets captured by them. Like he was that's right. He was in a bar. It was after he ran through to chasing after Lisa, and he's like, well, better get to the bars before they close. He's looking at his watch it's like who cares if it's
right. And in a world where he's a lone survivor, it's like the bars never close for me.
right. And he ends up like hearing a noise down in the wine cellar, and it turns out like he ends up getting ambushed by the ghouls, and they end up like sentencing. They put him on trial for being who he is.
Right.
And that's how it starts the whole process of how he meets the other group. That's the other group of survivors. And that's kind of how like where the story goes. And he finds that like his because we at this point we find out like how he survived the survived everything because he was a military doctor who had they were working on a cure for this because it was like germ warfare or whatever that was used against them.
Right.
And they were doing some tests with some vaccines, and he had as they were trying to fly it over to where they were going, the helicopter pilot succumbed to the disease and was crash landing, and
then he was starting to.
And so he's like, I gotta at least, like, fuck it. Hopefully it'll work. If not, then whatever.
Right, because again, like in the synopsis, it talks about an experimental vaccine, and when after the crash, as he's like, starting to feel the onset of the disease, he basically has he has nothing else to lose, so he injects himself, and he survives.
Yeah, and so yeah, that happens. He ends up surviving, and because he's now immune to the disease, he has the cure living within him.
Right.
And
he cures the antibodies, and he can he's essentially the cure.
Right, and it kind of like it goes from this movie that's kind of like, man, like you're watching a guy descend into madness to a guy who finally like you're starting to actually get you feel hopeful. Like it's like, oh man, like good, he's gonna help cure these people that he found, and they're gonna go off and kind of live off the land and kind of live kind of restart humanity, if you will.
Right. Yeah. There was that line from the kid Dutch, where he was talking about like, oh, we're gonna drive to a mountain that that has no freeways, or everything that we do there will be for the first time. And one of the older kids, like Dutch, is like, yeah, man, it's like it'll be like Garden of Eden, but this time we won't listen to the snake.
Yeah, I like that line. I was like, that was a great line.
Yeah.
I also loved Dutch's jacket was like giving it.
Yeah, in the back is middle finger. Yeah.
That was great. But unfortunately, the movie does take a turn where, because unlike Dr. Neville, who is immune, the other survivors, can succumb to this mutation, if not for the as we saw, like because initially he Dr. Neville helps to cure Lisa's brother, who is starting to turn.
Right.
And he knows that the other guys, it's only a matter of time, so he has to use his own blood to create the serum to help get them healed up.
Mm-hmm.
And he once Lisa's brother, what's his name? Was it Richie?
Richie, yeah, it was Richie.
Yeah, once Richie is cured, and they obviously they have the plan to move to the mountains and get away from the city. He is, Richie is well-meaning, but he's like, we should use this to cure the ghouls, or
The family.
Matthias, the family, and it's like either that, it's like we either heal them or we have to kill them. We can't just leave them the way that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
he's just a naive, idealistic kid, and he's like, why can't we save them?
And it's like and he's like, they're too far gone. Like, they're murderous freaks. We can't. They can't be negotiated with.
Right, because it's one thing, because like Richie, he was just sick, and his sister was taking care of him. He was being looked after, and he hadn't done anything where he might later feel the weight of the guilt of, as opposed to Matthias and the others. They did some shit. They killed people.
Right.
And so like what happens when they do get cured? The weight of what of their crimes is gonna weigh on them. So in a weird way, it's sort of a mercy that he doesn't cure them.
It's like, because it's like, even I think he wanted to kill them, but he's like, no, we're just we'll let them be. It's like, we'll just leave.
Right.
And it would have worked too, but Richie ended up trying to negotiate with them. They end up killing him, and during this process, Lisa ends up turning, which she turned very quickly.
Right, that was very confusing for me. I was like, because I thought there was a moment where like something happened and like Matthias got to her and like somehow accelerated the process, but like within within a few hours she was full mutant.
Well, they do allude to, or Dutch kind of alludes to that like earlier in the film, where he talks about, it's like, sometimes it takes, we've seen it where it happens in a matter of minutes, and other times it takes a few weeks, and we just don't know. So maybe like,
okay.
So in that case, like, maybe it is like, maybe because she's older,
mm-hmm.
and that she's like, oh well, it just happened very quickly.
Mm-hmm. I see.
So I mean, that's a possibility. They did kind of set that up a little bit, but yeah, it was like, I was like, yeah, I was a little confused by that as well.
Yes.
And Lisa ends up in a lot of ways, while she has been good for Dr. Neville, she's a huge weakness to him, because around her, he has his guard down a lot, even after she had turned, because like, I can still rescue her, and that was the opening that was used in the end, where Matthias was able to, they were able to get into his compound that he had set up, and also ended up being his demise at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. I don't think we have to say that, because everyone knows the score when they come to watch us.
Yeah. But yeah, it was. I don't know. I was hoping that maybe it would end on a hopeful note. I guess it kind of sort of does. I mean, he was able to create hopefully enough serum for all the.
For Dutch and all the kids. And maybe for people, who they might, run into.
Well, the problem is, like, they, if those are the only people that are left, I think that would have been enough. But if they encounter anybody else,
mm-hmm.
They don't have a doctor there. They can't create. He was the only one that could create that like serum, because he was he was a like kind of a scientist in a way.
Yeah, he was a military scientist. Um, yeah, but okay, this time really spoiler alert. But in the Will Smith version, the character does die in that too. But he was able to give the sample of cured blood and send it off with this woman who eventually finds other survivors, and and they look like they're pretty well situated. So and it's implied that they are able to synthesize more of the cure and bring back humanity in the Will Smith version.
I might have to watch that. Like it's been, I don't know. I think I watched it, but I don't remember it. So I might have to go back and like rewatch that. And I never saw the Vincent Price one, so I definitely want to watch that.
Right, but I actually looked into it, and just going by the kind of like the plot outline, it leans a little bit more toward like the Vincent Price's wheelhouse and like the kind of horror genre where the mutants in his version are more vampiric, and they're susceptible to steaks and garlic.
Ah, I see. Okay, so that like in that one they're more like vampires. Here
Mm-hmm.
it's like they're not even really like zombies in a sense. Like
Right, because they're still fully cognitive, and they still like remember
like,
things, about their lives. But then they're like, but the disease also kind of warps their minds a bit.
right. Yeah, it's kind of like they have become new beings in a sense. Like, and they even like kind of refer to themselves like like, oh, you're the dead old ways. We're the
Yeah.
new. Um, and isn't that with like I Am Legend, like they're almost like these weird monsters.
Yeah, they're like these zombie vampire. I think this is where it gets interesting because in the Will Smith version, I think they do kind of a combination where they cut because in the Will Smith one, the turned, let's call them, are actually attracted to blood.
Okay, so yeah, then they're more
Yeah.
zombie like in that
Yeah, and
sense.
they have an aversion to sunlight because if they come out in the sunlight, then the UV like starts burning them. So they're a little bit more vampiric, even though.
So it's kind of like a mixture of like the two then in a way.
Right, and then because in I Am Legend, the character of Dr. Neville, he keeps a diary, or he keeps a log,
Right.
and he noted a behavioral anomaly in the Turned, where one of the Turned exposed himself to light to try and save another Turned person.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so in that way, like you do kind of get like the merging of the two previous versions, where you have like these vampiric creatures, but then they also display some kind of awareness. Maybe
Hmm.
not like
Yeah.
not maybe able to verbalize like in Omega Man, but but
Yeah.
they still have an awareness or some level of consciousness where that they are able to form, interestingly enough, family groups, quote unquote.
Yeah. It's I don't. It was a very interesting film. Like I said, I went into this completely blind,
Mm-hmm.
not really knowing anything about it. Um, so I mean, it was definitely a good choice. I'm glad we chose this film.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean that's really all I had to say about it. Obviously, in the end, Dr. Neville dies. Hopefully, saving the rest of those survivors. But it is left a little bit ambiguous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Lisa, I think even though she had kind of become one of the other creatures, I don't think she was beyond saving. And her consciousness, like she was kind of it kind of reminded me like how she reacted. Is the here's the other thing. Here's my other theory about this too, because we know that Dr. Neville was the only one that was completely immune, and later
Mhm.
Richie becomes immune to this disease, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of them obviously they had been with the family beforehand, yet they did not show like the same signs, like their skin wasn't, they didn't have the um, um, what's the when the skin's like all white, the skin and the hair is all white, the albino,
Yeah. Albinism.
yeah, albinism, and like the eyes, kind of like the day blindness and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my thing, but they had been with the family, and you can almost like in a Dracula fashion when once Matthias and the group started to chant, it was almost like a lure to Lisa, and I'm wondering if maybe that's what like kind of finished her turning um, into like one of them, whereas like once like that whatever that disease was, maybe them all like doing that chant like helped kind of finish the transformation, because we do see later on where she's like she wants to help Dr. Neville and like go with him, because her consciousness knows that, like, oh, I love this guy, I want to be with him, and I want and all that stuff, and he has the cure. Yet when Matthias is calling afterwards like Lisa, and like they do all that chants, like she can't be helped, but like it draws her to him, and she's torn. So I'm kind of wondering if it's more kind of almost like a Dracula and Renfield type of situation.
Maybe. I mean, because I haven't read the book, but that this movie is based on. Um, but
And I'm just
that
going based off of this film. I'm not
right,
I'm
right,
not
right,
even
right,
like
right.
making
But
out
it
any
might
other.
be, it might, because the author of the book also helped write the screenplay, so it might be, some sort of tie-in to the original story, where like yeah, the people infected by this disease might, you know, become like vampire-like creatures.
Yeah, I mean it's like they're nocturnal. Um,
Yeah, they're
yeah,
sensitive to the sun or light. And then, at least in Omega Man, they never mention anything about this need for blood, but they do remark that in the later movie, I Am Legend. So.
yeah. I don't know. Do you have any other like thoughts about it about this movie, Andy? Any other like funny moments or whatever that you liked from the film or didn't like?
Not really. No, this. I mean, I really like this movie. I thought the humor was great. Especially because it's kind of like the conversations you would be having with yourself if you were by yourself.
Yeah, I did love that part.
So it was very believable in the sense, like, if you had to endure a long term isolation, of course you might be start talking to yourself, or you might have you might start playing chess with imaginary friend.
Yeah, Charlton Heston was great in this film. I mean, obviously, once again, he stole the show.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, like the because he did get the majority of the screen time, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't the only like good actor. Like the leader of the group, Matthias, like he was pretty like oof. It kind of creeped me out a little bit. Um, but the other characters were good too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all this. Yeah, yeah. Again, yeah. The Charlton Heston might have been the star, but the supporting cast was also fantastic, and really
Yeah.
really added to this film.
So should we give our ratings then?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
You want to go first, Andy?
Okay, I'll go first this time. I'm gonna give this movie. I'm gonna give this movie a 4.
Ooh, okay. I'm actually gonna give it a 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, like I said, like Charlton Heston is great. It's yeah, it's not like you said, 3.5 is not a bad like rating. It's just
No.
I'm comparing, based off like the other Heston films that we've been watching so
Mm-hmm.
far. It's like I said, it's no Ben Hur, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm still kind of debating whether I liked this over Soylent Green.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a really good film. Like I said, there's a few things that are a little ambiguous. So like I said, I'm still kind of digesting it and like kind of running my theories that I have. And yeah, I don't know, it's a good movie.